Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming in, even through all the little technical difficulties that we were experiencing this morning. So today is orientation and mobility along with some nutrition. And last week we touched on some street crossings at a lighted intersection. So I just wanted to review a couple of things that we talked about in regards to crossing at a lighted intersection. So recognizing the street edge, it's the number one thing, not just at lighted intersections, but just street crossings in general. And making sure that you're using your surroundings to recognize where that crossing is at, whether you are at the corner, if it's a lighted intersection, if it's a four-way stop, if it's a T intersection, a Y, if it's kind of crooked or slanted, angled offset, or if it's a half lighted, half not, or if it's half stop, half not. So there's intersections that not only are just a three-way or four-way stop, sometimes there's only two stop signs on one street, and then the main road doesn't have any stop signs. So recognizing all those different aspects of a street is important when we're about to cross at an intersection. Maintaining a straight line of travel and lining yourself up along the street to where you're going to cross at is also really important. Making sure that you're listening to traffic and keeping it wherever you're crossing. When you're facing the perpendicular traffic, that's going to be your best bet in order to align yourself. Sensing how the traffic is crossing in front of your body. So when perpendicular traffic goes in front of you, that's a great way to be able to line yourself up accordingly. Another thing is using the edge of the crosswalk to be able to line yourself up. Now, if we were to do that, you do have to remember that at crosswalks, they may go to the center of the street, and they also may be off center from what the other side of the crosswalk truncated domes are at. So making sure that you are fully aware of where the truncated domes are in line with the ones across the street to where you're going. Knowing if there's an APS signal for lighted intersections and how it is timed. And then understanding the amount of lanes and the traffic patterns to which you are crossing the street at. Those are the main key things to keep in mind when we're crossing streets, especially some of those being lighted intersections. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about four-way stops, T intersections, just crossing tips in general. A good way to be able to determine if you are at an intersection is the feeling, the sun. If you feel more sun, because then you know that maybe on a sunny day, if you start feeling more of that warmth and the temperature change, you can realize that you're probably coming up on a corner or a building end, which means you're probably close to a corner. You can also feel maybe more of a wind stream coming because of you walking along a building can stop all that wind tunnel. And then as soon as you pass the building into an open space, you're going to possibly feel a little bit of a weather change. You can also feel like the sound of your cane or your surroundings are a little bit different. Typically also when you hit a intersection, the vehicular traffic and also pedestrian traffic is going to increase. So realizing if you're hearing more cars than people, you're coming up on an intersection. When we're coming up on an intersection and you start to feel truncated domes and you kind of recognize, well, hey, I might not be exactly at the corner of the street. It kind of feels like I'm in the middle of the block still. Some crosswalks don't lie directly in the middle of the street or right where the corner is. Sometimes crosswalks are a little bit further back on the block just to maintain a safe distance away from a main road. So they could be anywhere from 10 to 20 to 40 feet away from where the actual corner is. So recognizing that even though your truncated domes are further back, that you're still at a crosswalk and knowing how far away from the road that you are. Another thing to know is when you are coming up on a intersection, again, to recognize what kind of intersection it is. If it's a plus intersection, a T, a Y, if it's angled or offset in any way, knowing how many stop signs there are, if there's only two, if it's a plus intersection and there's only 2 stops going on one way and then the other way is only, it's straight through traffic. Knowing what actually this is going to sound like a really weird thing, but knowing the bicycle traffic as well. Is there a lot of bicycles that travel a lot through this area? Bicycles are supposed to travel very similar to cars. They are supposed to stop at stop signs behind the crosswalk. They are to follow the traffic patterns and whatever is in line with what you're supposed to do as a vehicle. Some don't. And more often than not, if it is an unexperienced biker and they're just biking to get to work every day and not necessarily a high-end biker, they are going to probably not follow the traffic laws because they don't realize that is a major rule to follow when they're traveling. So knowing what the bicycle traffic is like and listening for a bicycle, because even if there isn't any bicycle traffic, you need to realize that there is a possibility of that happening, that if you were to step out in the street, there might be a bicycle coming. So story is, ironically enough, I mean, I am fully sighted. I have no issues with vision. And I happened to walk out in the middle of the street to go across, to go to the vehicle that I was going to get into. Now, I didn't cross at a crosswalk, but I was just stepping out into the street. And I got hit by a bicycle. And I was never expecting to get hit by a bicycle. I didn't hear it. I didn't see him. I just kind of stepped out because I didn't see any cars. So I was like, I'm good. So I stepped out and I got hit by a bike and the guy was really mad at me and all this stuff. So funny enough, as a sighted person, I did get hit by a bike, which is very unlikely, but it happened. So those are just some small tips to remember when we're at a lighted intersection. Now any sort of intersection. Now we're going to move on to when are times to cross at a stop sign intersection. So the number one time that you can cross, which a lot of people feel most safe during, is crossing at a all clear, all silent. You don't hear any traffic present at all. There's no motor sounds, there's no masking noises, anything like that. The other time that you can cross is during a surge vehicle. So when you hear a vehicle at your closest lane of traffic that you're walking parallel with is your surge car. So that's the car that you're going to cross with. Note that never cross without these two, or if a person honks at you, if they wave at you or say, like, holler at you outside their window to say go, do not do that. Do not listen to what someone else is telling you. Only do what you have learned and what you have experienced for yourself. With regards to honking, the person could be honking for a completely unrelated reason, not to you. If the person does try to wave you on, I mean, silly enough, I've seen plenty of people get waved on, and as a person with a cane, you'd be like, I can't see you. So don't act like you can see them. Act like you can't see them at all. And if someone says go, they may be missing other traffic that you don't see, or they may be paying attention and stopping for you, but the opposing traffic may not be stopping for you. So just being mindful that even though that person is trying to be nice, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's safe to do. If that does happen, know that you can turn your body away from the intersection. So turning and facing the opposite direction of where your intersection is at is going to be your best bet to let people know that you are not crossing at that time. Another thing that you can do is looking around your surroundings. So not looking at the street or listening to traffic, but maybe looking at a tree, act like you're looking at birds, look at the ground and just face, so people think, okay, maybe this person isn't crossing. Another thing that you can do is take 2 steps back from the intersection and just stand back and act like you're not going anywhere and you're just kind of standing there. So those are just some things that you can do to let people know that you're not ready to cross, you don't want to cross, or to keep people away from trying to get you to cross without your surge vehicle or at an all quiet, all clear. Before I move on, any questions? All right, awesome. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is a surge vehicle. So even if we're not going on an all quiet, all clear, you need to listen for your surge vehicle. So that means your initial surge of traffic at your closest street that's running parallel to where you're walking. Once you hear that surge vehicle, make sure that they're not turning right. It's really important to know that if that person is your surge vehicle, that they're not, that initial surge is not going to just be initial surge turning into you, that person is going straight. So I typically have a rule of counting about 2 seconds after you hear that initial surge vehicle, then you go, to make sure that vehicle isn't turning. Something that can be a little bit of a risk when we're crossing with a surge vehicle is they can be turning left. That is something that you can listen for and learn over time if that car is turning left or not, if they're your initial surge vehicle. But sometimes you can miss it and misjudge. If you do, it's okay. Just, you can either, if you realize that they're turning left, you can, depending on where you are in your crosswalk. So if you are further away from the curb than you are the opposite curb, just go. But if you are close enough to the curb that you just left, you can step back and go to a safety zone. Another risk is electric cars. Now, they are hard to hear, but back in 2010, they began an act that was signed in 2011. It's called the Pedestrian Safety Enhancement Act. Now, electric vehicles are supposed to have an alert noise that indicates the electric car's initial surge. So that is in requirement of the Pedestrian Safety Enhancement Act. And if they don't have that, that's a problem. So that's something that you can bring up, and something that I think all O&Ms are trying to fix in general, because it's not okay to have these electric cars that you don't hear stop, don't hear start. So, or idling, it's really hard to understand. So when you're listening for traffic, most electric cars do sound like they're, when they start going, that they sound like the car just started up again. You don't hear them slow down or idling, but you may hear them start back up. So if you do hear that and you misjudged that there's no cars or it's an all quiet, all clear, knowing that that electric vehicle you'll hear that engine start, and you'll know if that vehicle is moving and you misjudged it. Also, in regards to a vehicle waving you on, you don't wave a vehicle on. You're blind, visually impaired. These people don't know how much sight you have. And ironically enough, there are drivers that will listen to a person with a cane that waves them on, and that's going to be on you. Or in a court, they could actually blame you and telling the court that you waved them on, and then they got in an accident. Or you could actually hurt yourself because that car got in an accident, and it could end up where the car gets bumped off to you on the side of the sidewalk if they were to hit somebody. So just make sure, if you don't want to go, do not wave them on. Use those tactics in order to just remove yourself from the intersection to let the person know you're not going, so you have no way of being at fault if anything were to happen in that intersection. Any questions yet? Okay, awesome. The last thing I wanted to talk about is when we're crossing an intersection with that initial surge vehicle, after those 2 to 3 seconds, don't hesitate. If you feel like it's time to cross, you cross. Just go for it. Like I said, if you do misjudge if it is turning left, or you do go at an all quiet, all clear, and you don't hear a vehicle, and then you hear a electric car starting up, again, you can either walk quickly to the other side, or you can turn back around and go to the other curb as quick as possible or into a safety zone. just making sure that you're getting yourself at harm's way as quick and as safely as possible. Last week I did touch on correcting a veer as well, going over if you were to veer or you were to misjudge if it was a offset intersection, to make sure that you know typically the way that you veer and correcting that properly. If you hit a curb or you start walking into cars on your side of the idling cars, then you know you have to go the opposite direction. If you do continue to walk, and when you're walking you end up walking way too long, or you start hearing moving cars get too close to your body, go in the opposite direction, making sure that you're not turning completely. You don't make a hard turn, you just kind of slightly angle yourself back on track. So don't over exaggerate it at all. Once you hit that curb or you find your curb, clear your area and then step up on the curb as quick as possible. Get yourself out of harm's way. So those are just some O&M tips of street crossings at any stop sign at all, or just intersections in general. If we're going over an intersection that does have a two-way stop and then the main road is constant, I don't recommend crossing that street to a lot of my clients if they aren't comfortable, or if they find that one road that is ongoing at all times is at a higher rate of speed that they could miss cars coming, to just not cross there and find another area that they can cross the street at, and just to make sure that they're crossing at the stop sign area and not across the main road. It can become unsafe, you can get hurt, and if you feel comfortable and you feel like you're knowledgeable enough to cross at that area and you know the area well enough that you can sense the vehicle coming, that's totally fine. Just know that don't risk it if you aren't prepared and you aren't ready to do so. Sticking to the safest crossing as possible is going to be your best bet. So that's O&M for the day. Any questions regarding street crossings or anything that you would like me to answer? Any experiences that you had with street crossings you want to share?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I know they're not super popular around here, and I've heard we might be getting them, but like down in San Antonio around the Riverwalk, they have the talking crosswalks. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, those are so cool. I wish more people had them. They're like the best thing ever. And then it really helps people realize. And then they also have the ones where the pedestrian sign is flashing. So it lets you know like when a pedestrian is crossing. So there are areas where there's high pedestrian traffic and you can press a button and it's just a crosswalk just for pedestrians, and it flashes to stop people. And I know some areas have that as well. And it lets them know that you can cross now, like safe to cross, Main Street at First Avenue, so there are a lot of those talking, or there is like specific pedestrian crossing signals. There's also crossings where it's all the cars stop and only pedestrians can cross, so they can jaywalk diagonally across the street, or they can just cross their crosswalk and stuff like that. So those are some really cool things. When I was in Cleveland, they had one of those where it was pedestrian only crossing in a very major lighted intersection where all vehicles were stopped and they just had pedestrians crossing the street, and there was just people going left and right and everywhere. So that was really cool. Anything else? Alrighty. We're going to move on to nutrition. Today we're going to be talking about liquids and intaking some healthy choices that you can drink and some choices that you want to limit. So I'm going to start off with the bad, so then we can end with a positive note with drinking and hydrating and all that stuff. So as you know, there are a lot of things out there that people say are good, are bad, Is it good? Is it really that bad? Can I have it? Should I never have it? Well, it varies. It depends on what your preferences are. If you are going to have a drink that, that you drink regularly, just making sure that you're not overdoing it. And then you're also not pairing it with other bad ones as well. So the first one is our juice and fruit juices. They are a very odd source of drink because there are so many different kinds of juices out there, where we have the actual strictly juiced products where people put in a juicer and they put it directly into the container and seal it up, and juice cleansing and all that. And that's such a popular thing nowadays, that there are juices and fruit juice that is okay. And that's one of them. Those freshly squeezed, freshly pressed juices are going to be your best bet if you are going to have juice. If you do have that kind of juice, know that that is typically a meal replacement, and it is not just a drink to have with a giant meal. You can have a hearty green salad with maybe some protein with your fruit juice, but making sure that you're not having like a massive pasta meal or a turkey dinner with your freshly squeezed, freshly pressed juice. Most juices that are found in stores in a container are have fake sugars, or they have real sugar added. There are more calories, but the one positive about a lot of juices that you can find is they have more vitamins than most regular just eating your fruit. So in that way, fruit juices or juice in general, it can have a positive side to it. So if you are having fruit, just know that if you do have that fruit juice, do that freshly pressed juice. Or if you're having the juice, know that pick the one that you actually are deficient in vitamins, because that way you can get those sufficient vitamins. And knowing that when you're eating with that juice, to subtract that amount of calories that's in your serving, so you know that you're not overdoing it, and be aware. So if anything, I'm going to pick on the limit list. I would say juices are probably the best bet on things that you should still maintain to have, than anything else that I'm about to talk about. Sports drinks. So typically people do get dehydrated, or they feel like I need a sports drink to get my electrolytes and my sodium and da 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 da. Well, sports drinks are actually not as great as you think they are for people that are just normal, everyday, walking around, doing a daily lifestyle. Sports drinks were made for sports athletes and endurance training athletes. If you are not endurance training or doing any sort of hardcore working out, there is no reason for you to have a sports drink. There are many other ways to get your hydration and the sodium intake that sports drinks have in electrolytes than drinking a sports drink. They are tasty, they are delicious, but they're high in sugar, they're high in calories, there's a lot of additives in them. So choosing your sports drink wisely if you are going to have it. Typically, they are not going to be your best bet in hydration, and I'll talk about some alternatives to getting your hydration and your electrolytes in that isn't sports drinks. Along with sports drinks, the vitamin waters, as delicious as they are, and they're called vitamin waters, they do have a lot of sugars in them, and they're added sugars. It's not necessarily the most fresh beverage to have. Vitamin water has been known to increase heart disease, the risk of getting type 2 diabetes, and also slows your metabolic rate down due to all the sugars and the additives in the vitamin water. So even though that it's called vitamin water and there's vitamins in it, just take a multivitamin. That's going to be, just take a multivitamin and drink a bottle of water. It's exactly the same. Yeah, it doesn't taste as delicious and fruity, but if you're going to have a vitamin water, just be careful and know that what you're putting in your body, and taking other things out of your diet to make sure that you're not overdoing it on anything. And if you're having a vitamin water, to limit the amount that you're having every day and each week even. So soda and energy drinks both have caffeine in them, but they are added caffeines. They are not a natural form of energy unless you do get the ones with the coffee bean extract. There are energy drinks that do have that organic, natural coffee bean extract in them. The only thing that is with energy drinks is they are known to cause heart palpitations and increase your heart rate at a unhealthy level. So, and they typically have a higher caffeine content than just coffee in general. So most people, when they have coffee, they're having about 3 to 5 cups a day. I know it sounds like a lot for anyone who just has 1 cup, but typically people are having between 3 to 5 cups of coffee a day. Now that is spread throughout because when you drink your coffee, it's hot, and typically people drink it slow. An energy drink, it tastes good, it's flavorful, people chug their energy drinks, so they're getting all that caffeine that you would get from coffee or a little bit more than that, and you're having it all within like 45 minutes to an hour, if not less. So they're high in calories, sugar, they have high octane content, which are some form of harmful stimulants. A lot of energy drinks do have those harmful stimulants in them, and they're typically not FDA approved ever. So just be mindful that energy drinks are normally not FDA approved. They're not that great. I am definitely an energy drink person, and I drink the ones with like 300 milligrams of caffeine, when typically a cup of coffee has about 70 to 80 milligrams of caffeine in it. So I have a very significant amount of caffeine in those energy drinks, and it's probably not the best, but that is a form of energy that isn't the smartest. Now with soda, there is a lot of sodium, sugar, and calories. There's no vitamins and minerals. It does not fill you up. So you're putting calories into your body that does not fill you up because it's just calorie waste, calorie eater that is not necessary. Is what I like to call empty calories that you're just putting in your body with no nutritional value at all. Even though you could say, well, it has sodium and I need some sodium. Well, no, it doesn't do much. It tastes good. The bubbles are awesome. And then diet soda, yeah, a lot of people drink that. It's not terrible, but know that artificial sweeteners can actually cause you to crave sweets more. So even though it is a sweetener, artificial sweeteners will make you want more regular sweets. So it's going to cause a little bit increased in cravings for those sweet stuff. A form of soda for an alternative is sparkling water, not to be confused with club soda or tonic water. Those are forms of soda. Sparkling water is not. And we'll go back to that towards the end for the good hydration. Smoothies can be good and can be bad. It depends on what you're doing. If you're going to make a smoothie, make it at home, or know exactly what they're putting in your smoothie. If you go to a place and they're putting those frozen berries, no sugar added, you're going to an organic place, they're not just adding fruit juice, or they're not just throwing a whole bunch of crap in a drink with sugar and all that, then it's fine. But knowing what they put in it. Smoothie King has delicious smoothies, but typically most of them are on the higher end of unhealthiness, additives, lots of, basically a Smoothie King smoothie is about what someone should be having in a day of food. So just knowing that and knowing what you're getting, and sometimes you can just ask what's in the smoothie. Hey, what are you putting in it? Is it fruit juice? Are you just throwing in some flavor? What's going on here? So just knowing what that is. I did touch on coffee, but flavored coffee is not your friend. They're good. Our mochas, our lattes, our cappuccinos, all that are sweetened, creamed coffees. While they are delicious and they taste good, not the best. A lot of people drink coffee with a lot of that sugar because they don't have any way else to have a coffee because they think it tastes gross with all that. Then just don't drink coffee and figure out a better way to have your caffeine. There are other ways, or you can take a caffeine pill. They do make caffeine pills, there's caffeine in some chocolates. Just finding another alternative or something, but don't put all that cream and sugar in there. It's not that good. A lot of creamers are unhealthy just in general, as a rule. They just are. They're not great. There's not a lot of nutritional value in them. So, hey, one little creamer is fine, but if you're going to be making these sugary flavored coffee drinks, it's not the best choice. Treat yourself to one every now and then. If you are a white mocha, pumpkin spice latte, cappuccino person, totally fine. Have it, enjoy it every now and then, but don't overdo it, because that could really add a lot. My aunt used to have from Starbucks, what was it, a grande white mocha every single day, and she cut him out, and she ended up losing like 15 pounds in a month because of all the added calories that she was getting from those white mochas. So that just goes to show you what they do to your body. Cocktails. So we all like to indulge in a cocktail every now and then at night, maybe one per day, maybe just on the weekends. There's a binge cocktail drinking. Just knowing that if you are going to be indulging in a cocktail drink, to limit the amount, depending on what you're drinking. You can, if it's a heavier content, you're going to have about 1.5 ounces. So as the content or the percentage gets lower, your ounces typically can get a little bit higher. So anywhere from between 1.5 ounces to about 12 to 16 ounces per serving. And that's probably all about you should have. It does slow your metabolism down, liver issues, all that. So making sure that you are having the best form and limiting it. Mixed drinks and frozen ones are a huge metabolic slower, because not only is there the high alcoholic percentage, but there's also a lot of sugars involved. So sticking to the all natural form of every single beverage and closest to not having anything added into it is going to be your choice if you are trying to maintain your greatest health. If you're not too worried about it, then you know what, indulge and have a good time. Just be smart. The last thing is sweetened non-dairy milk. So being careful of the amount of sweetness in your non-dairy milk. So I have a dairy problem. So knowing that I normally get unsweetened dairy beverages, they taste very equivalent to the sweetened ones. But just knowing that if you do get the sweetened, they're adding a lot of stuff into it that you shouldn't be having. So making sure that you keep to the unsweetened versions. You can actually get a lot of nutritional value from these non-dairy milks. Just knowing that if you do, just be mindful of what's in it and read those labels, like a lot of other things that I've talked about. So the good hydrating beverages, we have our veggie juices. So everything that's fresh squeezed veggies. If it is the V8s, which are veggie pressed juices, what they advertise they are, they have a high sugar content based off of the tomatoes sometimes that they put in them. Tomatoes have a high sugar content. Just be mindful of what you're having when you have the V8s, but a lot of veggie juices are very hydrating, including cucumber juice. Really great when you squeeze cucumber juice. It's so hydrating. Cucumbers have a great fiber content. Celery juice have a great high fiber, lots of water, really good for you, not a lot of sugar, a lot of vitamins and minerals in them. Adding lemons and limes and fruit infused into your water. So that means putting them in a little container and letting the water soak into those fruits, and then just drinking water that's flavored with fruits naturally is a really great way to have your water and still have a little flavor in it. They do that a lot with the sparkling water. So they add carbonation and then they infuse it with those fruits to make it taste good. When you have your sparkling beverages, just check the nutritional value on it, that it's not added sugars or added other things. A lot of them do have citric acid, which can be good and can be bad depending on your health concerns. Another way to get electrolytes in is coconut water. Your coconut water is very delicious and tasty, and it just be careful of how much you intake. It does have a high sugar content, but it is really tasty. So just, have your coconut milk. It is a great electrolyte beverage, and it's really great for people who have diabetic concerns because it does have the sugars that you would need, those natural sugars, and it has the electrolytes that you would need if your levels were dropping. The last thing is herbal teas. Herbal teas are great. They can limit or they can reduce your risk of cancer, stroke, heart disease, and lower your blood pressure. Coffee can also bring down your risk of getting type 2 diabetes, liver disease, heart disease. Unless you add cream or sugar, then you're adding those risks in there. So just be mindful when you're eating and drinking to know what's in everything that you're putting into your body, and just being smart about it. Any questions before I finish? Looks like no hands raised, no chats. Okay, so that was my spiel for the day. As moving forward, I think what we're going to do is stick to the orientation and mobility tips, and limit the amount of nutrition and fitness that are in our sessions, just because I feel like orientation and mobility has been a really great additive to all the things that we're doing. So we're going to steer a little bit less of the fitness and nutrition area and go more towards orientation and mobility tips and thoughts for the day. So that's going to be what my talks are going to mainly focus on moving forward. And we'll put that in an email that Rebecca will send out to let everybody know where we're moving towards. I may add some nutrition and fitness in regarding my orientation mobility tips, as long as it goes along with everything else I'm going to be talking about. So that's what we're going to be doing moving forward.